The absolute train wreck that is the DCEU has received a much needed shakeup recently, hiring James Gunn and Peter Safran to act as the new creative heads of the DC movie, TV, and animated universe. Although a considerable shift in leadership was needed, people are already up in arms about one of the first decisions the new pair has made, recasting a large majority of the present DCEU. With some exceptions, it really seems like they're going to blow things up and start from scratch here, which I do think is a good decision, even if I will be sad to see certain actors go, and even if I think they maybe could have or should have kept certain actors in their present roles. But that is besides the point. The moment I heard that Henry Cavill would not be reprising his role as Superman, the gears in my head started whirling. Then they started whirling for the next Batman, then Wonder Woman, and so on and so forth. Eventually my brain spiraled out of control, and the only thing I could think of to help manage the impending insanity was to make this video. My little fan cast for the future of the new DC universe. And yes, they've officially dropped the E. The rebrand is in full swing. But without further ado, let's begin with the traditional face of the Justice League, a man of hope and optimism, Superman. A man of hope and optimism, not Jesus Christ himself. Recent media has sometimes opted for highlighting Superman's superiority over others rather than focus on the things that really make Superman, Superman, such as his positive, optimistic outlook, his true belief that things will get better, and his desire to protect Earth, his home. I adored Henry Cavill in this role, but honestly he was not written very well in my mind at all. And I hope they sway away from Superman's larger-than-life qualities and make him a lot more grounded, lighthearted, and hopeful. With that in mind, my dream casting would be Henry Cavill. But that's not really possible, so I do have a real casting. But look, it would be weird at this point, but come on. He's perfect. Look at him. Perfect. Perfect for Superman, not just perfect in... Well, not only does he look the part, but he knows and deeply cares for the character. That's not as rare as it used to be, but still not something to be undervalued. He loves this role, and a lot of people love him in it, which is another reason I'm surprised they're even recasting him. For the foreseeable future, they're not going to find a bigger box office draw than Henry Cavill. Aside from the desire to blow up the DCU entirely, I really have no idea the rationale behind this decision. If they were recasting everyone, I'd be entirely on board. But they're not, with supposedly people like John Cena and Margot Robbie set to reprise their roles going forward. Though it's pretty hard to get clarity on who may or may not be getting recast in the future. Margot and Cena are both excellent in their roles, but so is Cavill. Anyways, he would be my dream cast, but with that being pretty much impossible at this point, we've still got some incredibly great choices to consider. Although I do love Richard Madden for the role, for the time being he is still tied up by the MCU, which is basically the only thing that will automatically exclude people from my list. As Icarus in Eternals, he displays a lot of the qualities I don't want in my Superman, but as Rob Stark he gives me a lot more of what I would want. Calm, humble, strong leader, not afraid to step up when he has to, never cruel for cruelty's sake, but able to enact justice when the time calls for it. He's a good age, he has a great look, and I'd be thrilled to see him in this role if he died at the end of Eternals or wasn't brought back for whatever reason and became available. The next person I really considered here is Austin Butler. After stamping his name in Hollywood with his incredible role as Elvis Presley, I think he's well equipped for the heavy shoes that come with playing Superman. And he's got the right age and a great look for it as well. Just look at the hair curl. From my vantage point, I'd say he's become the clear fan favorite for this role, and it's not hard to see why. His stock is only going to rise after he plays Fade Wraith Harkonnen in Dune Part 2, and I really like the idea of him playing the version of Superman I most want in the DCU. And I actually really like his chances too. Honorable mentions go to Chris Evans, who I weirdly love for this role in practically every facet. But not only do I think it's unlikely they'd want to hire Captain America to be the face of their new universe, I also think it's unlikely Chris Evans would sign a contract for 10 more years as the same character in a superhero franchise again. And I don't think Evans' time with the MCU is done quite yet. My other honorable mention is Taron Egerton, but I have less rationale for him. I just think he'd do a wonderful job and...
Jackman, you never fail to surprise me. Woo! Can I get a vodka in here, please?
The way he says vodka kind of means he has a golden pass to play whomever he wants in my eyes forever. Austin Butler is my personal fan cast to play Superman in the DCU going forward. Now for my personal favorite superhero, Batman. Like some others on this list, this role is technically two roles in one, Batman and Bruce Wayne. Spider-Man is a character famous for debate amidst the fanbase in regards to not just the best portrayal of Spider-Man, but of Peter Parker as well. And with a character as well established and well known as Batman, it is certainly worth considering both aspects of his dual identity when considering the best actor for this role. In my dream world, where I had completely free reign to hire absolutely whomever I wanted, my number one choice would no doubt be Robert Pattinson. For obvious reasons, he is unavailable, and I desperately hope it remains that way as I want that movie to remain in its own little universe. And no worries anyways, because I have the perfect backup plan. Legendary actor Christian Bale. For my recast, I would go with Adam Driver. But god damn it, was this ever a hard one. I even typed this precise part of the script but continually changed the name until I finally settled on Driver. And thank god I did, because although he wasn't one I initially thought of, the moment I did it stuck and I've never gone back. I do believe Adam Driver would be perfect for this role, but I can't help but feel like Michael Fassbender and Cillian Murphy also would have eaten this role up. They have their qualifications, but mostly they're each just excellent actors who I feel would excel with the dark and brooding nature, the tragic past, the peculiar moral code, and the dual identity. Murphy was even close to getting this role in the Nolan series, eventually losing out to Bale, but being given the role of Scarecrow because of how well he'd auditioned. And Fassbender is just an incredible actor who has mightily portrayed intense psychological issues before, and even has a pretty beloved comic book character on his resume as well. But as for Driver, I look at Kylo Ren as a reason why I think he could nail the emo style of Bruce Wayne. The jet black hair aside, he carries this kind of sadness with him in a lot of his roles that almost feels inescapable. He's not permanently sad, rather he just grew up with melancholy such a pervasive element of his life that he's just completely accepted it. Even in his roles where sadness isn't always a key element of the character, his eyes simply refuse to hide a sort of intense feeling of loss. It brings a lot of depth to his roles and he utilizes it in many different ways, such as an unstable drama queen in the Star Wars sequels, an overwhelmed father on the brink of collapse in Marriage Story, and a man who simply accepted his life precisely as it is and longs for little else in Patterson. I think he could bring a ton of interesting and traditional qualities for Bruce Wayne, and beneath the cowl I think he'd excel excellently playing a hyper-pragmatic, largely emotionless strategist. Although I've only really mentioned it in regards to sadness, Driver is more than capable of using his facial features, mainly his eyes, to convey a wide array of other emotions too, much like Robert Pattinson, who, to be frank, I see Driver's Batman being way more similar to than, say, Batfleck's portrayal. He's also quite tall too, and with the right suit they could make him look far more comic book accurate than Batman's of old in terms of stockiness, which is incredibly important to many people. For several reasons, I can't imagine the DCU will give us a young, year 1 or 2 Batman, so Adam Driver stepping into this role as an established but far from finished growing Batman / Bruce Wayne sounds lovely to me. He's a former Marine, he murdered people in The Last Duel, he kinda played a dual identity in BlacKkKlansman, and he's no stranger to fantasy mega franchises. Maybe this one will finally give him the fantastic saga he's always deserved. Another honorable mention I didn't talk about earlier, for me, would be Taron Egerton. But I have less rationale for him, I just think he'd do a wonderful job and...
Woo! Can I get a vodka in here, please?
The way he says vodka kinda means he has a golden pass to play whomever he wants in my eyes forever. Next up is the Joker, who I am sadly close to becoming with how few of you guys are subscribed. That was somewhat clever, right? Maybe a bit of low-hanging fruit, but it needed to be said. Please and thank you. I am not kidding when I say every single time that little number goes up, I smile and cry like a fragile little flower. And who doesn't want to make someone smile and cry when it's as simple as pressing a button? You simply can't have the best version of Batman without the Joker, and with the DCEU's utter failure in terms of utilization and writing with their Joker, I think this is an area in which the DCU can score an early and somewhat easy slam dunk. The Joker might be the most consistently fascinating and enticing role in Hollywood, with a slew of people who would do wonderfully if given the chance. But for my money, there's only one actor alive who was absolutely born for this role and yet still has not portrayed the Clown Prince of Crime: Willem Dafoe. I don't anticipate much pushback on this one, but before we give the brief summary as to why he demolished this role, I wanted to highlight a few other people who would give me similar levels of excitement if casted. Ewan Rowan, Bill Skarsgård, Evan Peters, and Cameron Monaghan have all played powerful lunatics before, and all very successfully. Skarsgård would be the biggest draw, and we know he can do the facial shit under heavy makeup. Monaghan has already pretty much proven he can play the role. Evan Peters is Evan Peters, but Rowan would be my personal choice as he's so fucking excellent as Ramsey, displaying many of the same sadistic and masochistic tendencies, and he has a beyond lovely singing voice, which I know doesn't mean much for this role, but I can't not mention it. Either of those four would get me giddy as shit, as would Taron Egerton, but I have less rationale for him. I just think he'd do a wonderful job, and...
Can I get a vodka in here, please?
The way he says vodka kinda means he has a golden pass to play whomever he wants in my eyes forever. Willem Dafoe, however, was absolutely born for this role and has shown it time and time again. He deserves the chance to play debatably the greatest villain in history, and I can't envision a world in which he doesn't thrust his name right up there alongside the other Joker greats, of which there are many. Jared Leto is absolutely not one of them, but I did love that casting and I'm sad he turned out so... like this. I think in another world he also could have been an excellent Joker, but the insane amount of others who could conceivably get this role— oh fuck, I never even mentioned Jake Gyllenhaal— save for some multiversal shenanigans, means I don't foresee him reprising this role anytime soon. Christian Bale would be great here too, Jesus Christ. Next up is everyone's favorite Cyborg. Cyborg! And this was probably the casting choice that came most easily to me: John Boyega. Some others were under consideration. Michael B. Jordan could do well with this role, as could Daniel Kaluuya, though I think he'd be better suited for a different style of character. Sterling K. Brown also gave me some pause, and so did Taron Egerton, but I have less rationale for him. I just think he'd do a wonderful job, and
Vodka.
the way he says vodka kinda means he has a golden pass to play whomever he wants in my eyes forever. Ray Fisher was really good when written well, namely in ZSJL, but John Boyega just suits this character so well for me. Dark and serious, but with a good sense of humor and a lot of hope they could maybe lean into a bit more, I see a lot of fit in this role, but with severely more payoff. Cyborg becomes sort of the emotional core of the Justice League in ZSJL, and I like that style for Boyega here. He occupies a similar role to The Force Awakens, and he pulls it off really well. He's so charismatic as both a lighthearted funny guy and a pessimistic what else could go wrong guy, and I think he could merge both of those elements together, while leaning a lot heavier into the hope and humanity, to create a character who ideally won't be featured exclusively in team-up movies where there is an adequate time for him to be established and grow. This is one of very few characters who I wouldn't be upset to see the DCU give us a bit more of an origin story for. Cyborg is a guy who doesn't really have a super set-in-stone framework for how he needs to be portrayed yet, so Boyega would be given a decent amount of freedom to explore this character and make it his own. As the most disappointing aspect of a largely disappointing saga, he still managed to be quite charming and get a lot of people on board with his character. Imagine what he could do if given the right franchise. Lastly, we've got Aquaman. And although I initially thought it might be a good idea to go away from the manly, badass archetype in lieu of a more traditional Aquaman design, I've since changed my mind. With Jason Momoa, a lot of it felt a bit forced. It's kind of hard to articulate why. Maybe just growing up with Aquaman as a bit of a joke in things like Family Guy made the total 180 to some sick-ass Dothraki motherfucker feel a bit jarring. And with the dialogue he's given and the way the characters treat him, it comes off a bit like the movie is begging us to find him cool. And Aquaman is cool, but thrusting him into a Justice League movie before giving us a chance to see what he's really like means instead of being shown how cool he is, we're just told he is. With that being said, I do think the King of the Seven Seas deserves quite a high level of badassery, both personality-wise and physically. The problem wasn't with Momoa himself, he embodied the character quite well at times despite literally being born to play another one. Sam Claflin caught my attention at first, and for a while I was even set on him taking over this role, especially after seeing this picture. He's literally got a... well, it's not a trident, but it's close. I like the idea of his surfer boy charisma being present for Aquaman, but I like the idea of a genuinely tough as shit seafarer just a little bit more. Claflin could be good, and although he's a bit off the board, I actually quite like Taron Egerton for this role. Though admittedly I have less rationale for him, I just think he'd do a wonderful job, and the way he says vodka kinda means he has a golden pass to play whomever he wants in my eyes forever. But I don't like either of them nearly as much as my actual pick, Charlie Hunnam. If you've seen him in The Gentleman, that's basically the exact kind of natural coolness I'm looking for in my Aquaman. Could Momoa have achieved that same effect if handled differently? Yeah, absolutely. So I don't feel the need to go the complete opposite way with a character like I used to. Charlie Hunnam feels like he embodies a lot of the reckless, tougher than you, cooler than you, better than you, while also being able to be more lighthearted and funny at times. At a lot of times, since I don't expect the DCU to be quite as dark as the DCEU tried to be. Not the MCU, not a joke factory, just a bit lighter at times. He's a good size, has the great blonde hair, and could easily pull off the grizzled beard if they wanted that for his character, which I personally think could work. Could create a nice dichotomy if he looked dark and serious but had lots of lighthearted fun in him, or it could just accentuate that personality if they wanted to lean into the sea is dark and scary, he should be too. In my opinion, only Batman and Superman have super set in stone character frameworks that really shouldn't be messed with too much, so a lot like Cyborg, I think the right actor could come along and really make this character their own. Do you agree with my choices? Let me rephrase that. Do you think there's anyone who could portray one of these comic book titans better? Because surely no one will agree with all of these thoughts. Hell, I barely even do. I feel like I was considering Taron Egerton for like every single role, and yet I didn't even cast him once. What the hell is that? There are simply way too many excellent choices out there, and with every new TV show or movie I watch, the list just grows. But I did put a lot of time and effort into this list, and I hope that's reflected by the choices themselves and how I rationalize them. As for the rest of the DC universe, I wanted to keep this video somewhat short, but I'd love to make a part 2 if this video does well enough. Let's say 50 likes? If this video gets 50 likes, I'll make a part 2 to this video featuring at least 5 more main-ish DC characters. There are certain characters like The Flash and Wonder Woman who I wasn't as set in stone on my choices for as who I would have liked, so I left them off this list. But that will change if I give it some more good thought, I promise. I already have some frontrunners. Please leave a comment down below on these castings, as well as your thoughts on future DCU ones to help for part 2. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and it'll help me greatly to know what other people might be thinking. Remember to subscribe so this channel can eventually grow to the point where I can put even more time and effort into this than I already am. And to make me cry like a little child on Christmas Day, I definitely don't still cry when I open gifts, not even when my girlfriend got me that Tyranitar plushie. Who even brought that up? And I'll see you next time.